All this fruit bear from these evil seeds, keep on spider webbing and the evil deeds, trying to kill them all, it'll be like pulling weeds. I'm an open creeds of a dying breed. For principles that I don't compromise, I was vilified by a lesser kind. When the money high, it'll make you blind. When the money down, you can see the signs. I was challenged by trying to find a line with a love and hate kind of coincide.
Yo, welcome to another episode of At the Bar Wit Beast. I'm blessed today to be here with my lovely wife, who is also a New York State trooper. So we're gonna talk about it today, yo. Thank you for being here, babe. Welcome down here to the bar.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
It feels special. I got up excited today. Like, oh, I got an appointment. I got an interview.
Yeah. We got some things to talk about. So we're gonna jump right into it. Do you feel like your childhood was different than other kids growing up with a trooper as a dad?
I don't feel like my childhood was different, but it definitely played a part. For example, I'm one of the few people I know who never really smoked weed. Okay. And that was one of those things that, like, I'm not going to say I was perfect and I never did nothing, but when I did things, like, it was always in the back of my head, like, I don't want to embarrass my father.
Gotcha.
Like, that did, and so there were certain things, like it's so, even for me to try it, even though I'm like, if I smoked it once, he might have never knew. But it was like, everyone who I knew who did it, they didn't do it just once. It was a habit. Okay. And that wasn't a habit I wanted to have, because I feel like at that point, it would be like, oh, you know, that's gonna be an embarrassment. So it was like certain things, like, you know, and like just certain behaviors, like that stuff played in my mind, like, oh, if I have to deal with any cops, they're gonna tell my father, and it wasn't so much the arrest, it was the embarrassment, like he's gonna be embarrassed. So gotcha. I tried to.
Do you feel like coming from a community that ultimately like is kind of disgruntled towards law enforcement? Do you feel like that made you a little bit more law enforcement friendly?
The fact that my father... Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know, I didn't know no police and no troopers and nobody in law enforcement, so they was always the ops.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I don't even know at what point I realized they was the ops. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it was like a thing of pride. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, oh, her father's a state trooper. Like, you know, like the family, the community, like they always, like embraced my father's career and placed it in high regard, and it was a big deal. So, for me, it was a good thing. You know what I mean? I think I didn't really realize until like high school that, oh, that's what it is? Like, yeah, no, I didn't know for a long time. It was like, you know, something I was proud of. It was something I told everybody. And then as I got older, I kind of started picking my audience, like whether or not I'm going to put that out there or not. Like, yeah. So I didn't know.
So was following his footsteps always the plan?
Absolutely not.
No?
No. I never wanted to be a cop. And again, not because it was a negative thing to me, because it never was. Even though I knew people, I know, you know, the different point of views and different sides. It was never a negative thing for me. It just was never what I had planned for my life. Okay. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
That was like always my plan, my goal, my dream. And sometimes I even still consider, like, you know what? It's not too late. I can still go to law school.
Trying to be Huxtable.
But what happened was, so I go away to college, and that's its own long story, but I go away to college. I end up in Virginia. Made it through not even my first semester, and I'm pregnant. So I had to come home, and I came home. Still went to school, and it was still the plan. Like, it was still the plan. But as I started, like, now I'm working and going to school, and I got a baby, it got harder. School got harder. You know what I mean? And it was and that was like a first for me, because school had never been hard. But when you're trying to juggle so many things and your attention is divided and you have other responsibilities, school kind of started taking a back burner. Gotcha. So I kind of felt like I basically became a professional college student. Like, you know, I'm withdrawn from classes. I'm I'm changing schools. Like I need a school that does more nights because I need, you know what I mean? Like so.
So how many schools did you attend?
I went to 4 colleges.
Okay. And
still don't have a bachelor's degree. I think ultimately I ended up being like a second semester junior when I finally was like, you know what? I just can't even do this anymore. It's got to be tiring. So anyway, so I got the first kid. Along comes the second kid, which neither planned. So right around the time when I got pregnant with my second son, my father calls me. He's like, state police are giving a test. You should take it. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And I took it because, like, I always do what my father tells me to do, or I try to do what my father tells me to do. He's usually pretty on point. So I took the test to appease him and make him happy. Never really thinking about what came after it. Never really thinking like that was gonna be my job. I'm like, all right, you want me to take this test? I'm gonna take this test. So I go just to shut him up. Not really, but yeah. All right, I'm gonna take this test. So I take the test. And because he was on the job, he had a little bit more insight into things. So he was able to get my test scores like hot off the presses. Like before they even got released to everyone else, they come in the mail. Like he knew. Now, so he calls me and he's excited. He's like, oh, you did really well in that test. They'll probably be calling you for like the first class or, the second class. I'm like, oh.
Did he know you were pregnant?
He didn't know.
I'm like, yeah.
I'm like, oh, I hadn't broke the news yet. I figured it wasn't going to go over well. So I'm like, oh, okay. So at some point, the pregnancy comes out. The family knows. And when he found out, he called me. And he's kind of like, oh, you're pregnant again. Like, I'm trying to get you this job. And you having more babies. Like, what are you going to do with another kid? Blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't exactly ecstatic. But, it so happened that they didn't call me for the first class.
Okay.
They called me for the second class. So with state police, each class is a 6-month academy. So with the time frame, like I said, when I took the test, I was probably at that point in the end of my first trimester, maybe something like that. So it just worked out. By the time they called me for processing for that class, my son was like 6 weeks old. Like I had the baby.
Copy. And
he was 6 weeks old. So the process is you have to do the physical. You gotta go, you gotta do the 1.5 mile run, you gotta do the push-ups, you gotta do the sit-ups. Now keep in mind, I got a baby. He's like 6, maybe 8 weeks, but I don't think he was 8 weeks. I think he was more like 6 weeks old. So again, I'm just going through the motions. I ain't working out. Like I'm not doing nothing. So I had no expectations of going in there and passing this physical, but I'm gonna go just to make sure my father knows that I'm crossing on my T's and dotting on my I's.
But just a little background, you did run track in high school. I did run track.
I ran track in high school and in college, so I got pregnant. So, and I was, and I was still young. You could bounce back from stuff quicker than back then than you could. So I got up, I went to the processing, and I passed the physical to my own surprise. I actually almost. I was worried about the run, and it actually ended up being the sit-ups that was the trial for me because I had a cesarean.
Copy.
So I didn't think about it until I was doing it. Like I almost ripped my insides open, but I get it done. So now you pass the physical. So I'm like, oh shit, I passed the physical. So now the next thing is like the psychological, and you do that, and it's like, oh shit, I passed the psychological. Then the next thing is the polygraph, and it's like, with everything that I passed, I'm like, they might be trying to give me this job. Like, I don't even know if I want this job. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, I'm thinking it's going to be like, oh, sorry, kid, you didn't make it. But you know what I mean? But I keep, like, passing everything. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want that. Okay. So, but the polygraph is pretty much the last thing. Because, I mean, you meet with a background investigator. You're kind of, they're interviewing you, but you're going through all these steps as your background investigator is completing your background. So it's like, so eventually, like, I'm thinking, like, they really about to give me time. I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I got a little baby. Like, I can't go into a police academy right now. Like, I can't, like, and at this point, my kid's like 3-4 months old. I'm like, I can't go into no academy. So he's like, well, you can defer. So you have to. So I had to like write a letter, you know, requesting that, you know, my application be held on hold for, you know, family reasons or whatever. So they put the application on hold.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'm still out here. I'm going to school. At this point, I transitioned from part-time work to full-time work because part-time work wasn't paying the bills, and I was just getting tired. And so by the time my son hit 2, I'm like, you know what? This state police thing is starting to sound a little better. Because at the time I was like, it was like I was struggling, you know, and
not to cut you off, but how long, when you put in that defer, how long does that last? Like,
you know what? I believe it lasts for as long as they're working on the current list. Because you gotta keep in mind when they put out that state police test, they get thousands of applicants.
Okay.
I want to say for my test there might have been 50,000. Okay. So when you take that test, based on how you score on that test, they rank you from 1 to 50,000, and they just start going down.
Okay.
And everyone has to go through the process. So the process weeds people out.
Gotcha.
So when it's all said and done, from that applicant pool of 50,000, they may end up with 2,000 people that actually complete the process, go through.
So that 2,000 becomes the list.
And
so
actually,
as long as they're on that list.
Yeah, so
okay.
They exhaust the list.
Gotcha.
So generally it's about 2 to 3 years.
And that skips you all that preliminary process.
Yeah. So I go into deferment. Like I said, I was getting tired. Like, I'm out here, I'm working. I'm like, you know what? That cop thing ain't sounding too bad. Because who knows when this law thing is going to happen. Like, I'm still not out of undergrad. Like, I just felt like I was so behind and not where I needed to be. And no one else was willing to pay me what they were willing to pay me with not a college degree and 2 kids. Gotcha. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. So, you know, I let my dad know, like, you know, Dad, you know, this is, I'm ready. So he was like, all right. So I also, like, because there's things they look at in your background, which is part. So anyway, so I'm like, I'm ready. We'll get into that probably another part of it. But I'm like, you know, I'm ready. So I wrote the letter, sent it in. I probably sent that letter in because my son turned 2 on December 13th. January 15th, I was in the academy. Like, it went like that. And I didn't expect it to be like that, but it was like, all right, let's go. We on. So that's how I became a trooper. Never the plan, but it worked out, I guess.
How difficult was the academy?
Hard.
Because, you know, like, you see, you know, movies and stuff, and it all look like boot camp.
Well, what people don't understand is every agency has a different process, which I, you know, I'm not necessarily a fan of. I wish it was more standardized, but. So for the state police, it's a 6-month residential academy. Okay. A lot of academies aren't.
Yeah,
a lot of
like
them is
Albany
like
PD, you go home.
It's like a 9 to 5. You go home and do your homework at night. No. State police from Sunday at 11 p.m. to Friday, whenever they say you can leave, like, you belong to them. You're on their time. You do what they say. You wake up when they say wake up. You go to sleep when they say go to sleep.
Yeah, no,
like,
that's
you know
different.
what I mean? So it's like it is like a boot camp. It's meant to stress you mentally and physically while still having to focus on studying and learning. So it's a lot. Yeah. It encompasses a lot. And like for someone like me, I always kind of consider myself pretty girly. So I wasn't really with none of the military bearings, the shine in the shoes, the sir, yes, sir. So that was an adjustment. And then keeping in mind that I deferred for 2 years from my initial processing. So I'm not in the shape. I'm nowhere near the shape I was in before, because now I've really been. I had like a desk job, so I'm, you know, sitting around eating bonbons all day with these 2 kids, and so I went in extremely out of shape. So that was rough. And then, you know, I had never picked up a gun, so I can't shoot. I can't, and you know, I hadn't been a licensed driver for very long. So I wasn't a very good driver. So I can't drive. Like, it just felt like everything was stacked against me. Like, it was rough. And I mean, you know, because I just wasn't used to all that. And I mean, my father did try to tell me, like, he was like, you know, you should be running. You should, you know, you need to be, you know, like, because even though I was in deferment, yeah, he. It's still not so much me, like, but he already knows, like, you at some point you're gonna be going to this academy. You better be working out, like, you better be running, you better be. So that first week I go in, and it was awful. It was awful. Like, it was awful. And then because they like from the moment you get there, they're just screaming at you and yelling at you and run here and do this and do that. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, I don't need this shit. Like, I had a job. I could go back to my job. I don't got to do this. This is crazy. So the first run, and I went in January 15th, so it was cold. It was freezing. So that Friday, it took us out. And they're making us run the loop at SUNY, which is about 3.5 to 4 miles, I think. Okay. And I think it's like a 5K when you run that loop. They got us out there in that cold, and they want us to run, and I'm trying to run, and I'm already out of shape, and my lungs is burning, that air is cold. I just dead stopped. I said, that's it, I quit. They're like, there's no quitting, Murray. You get your... I'm like, look at me. I quit. I'm not doing it. I quit, right?
How far did you make it before you quit?
About 200 feet.
Relax.
I don't think I made it around the first bit. I ain't making nowhere. I was like, yeah, nah, this ain't gonna happen. This ain't for me. So, you know what? They can't. So I walk my ass back into there, and I'm basically like, you know what? I got to do to quit. So again, now my father literally works right next door in headquarters. So they go over like, yo, your daughter's trying to quit, like. So, one of his good friends, who ultimately became, good friend of the family, I've known forever, Greg Mosley. At the time, he was a lieutenant on our job, for recruitment and hiring or something like that. And he comes over and talks to me, and I go in the room, like they tell me, like, Murray, you need to report to room 222 or whatever. I go in there, and he's sitting there, and he looking at me, I'm looking at him. He was like, "Tell me you want to quit." I'm like, "I do want to quit." They're like, he's like, Bobbie. I know it's different. It's that especially different for us. It's different for people of color. Like, we're not used to that at all. Like, most of us don't have, like, the military families and all of that. He's like, I know. He's like, it's a transition. He's like, but it's also, a great opportunity. It's a great career. He was like, so I'm not going to allow you to quit today. He's like, I want you to think about it over the weekend. He was like, go home over the weekend, think about it. If you still want to quit on Monday, we'll take your resignation. So I'm like, all right, I don't know why we got to prolong this shit, but okay. So at the time, I wasn't driving myself to and from the academy because my car was a hunk of junk. And, because I had the inside scoop, I know at some point they inspect your cars. My car wasn't passing nobody's inspection. It had a lot of issues. So my father was driving me back and forth, basically. So I get out the academy on Friday. He picks me up. I get in the car. He just looked before he was like, "You want to quit, huh?" I was like, "Yes." He was like, "Why you want to quit? Because they made you run?" And I'm thinking in my head, pretty much. But I ain't say it. I just looked at him. He was like, "Bob, don't quit because of running." He was like, "They can't hit you." He was like, "They can't scream at you." He was like, "Just do it." He was like, go out there and run. Run as much as you can for as long as you can, as hard as you can. He was like, and when you get tired, stop and walk for a little while. He was like, they can't, he's like, it is what it is. He was like, all they can do is scream at you. All they can do is scream at you. He's like, they can't touch you. He was like, so just get through it. He was like, don't quit because you don't want to run 3.5 miles. So I'm like, all right. And I'm telling you, so every week I would go back, and every week it was like, oh, God, I don't want to go back to this place. Every week it was painful. It was terrible. But I got through it. And now I look back, and I laugh. But when I was going through it, it was not funny at all. So.
So coming out of the academy, where did they station you?
Coming out of the academy, you can go anywhere. You can be sent anywhere in the state of New York. At the time when I came on, they let us know from the door. As soon as we walked in, you will not be getting G, which is the troop that we live in, which is the Capital District troop. You will not be getting L, which is Long Island. You will not be getting A, which is Buffalo. Those troops are completely full. So you guys will have to decide where you want to be.
Gotcha.
In any of the other troops. And there was no troop NYC back then.
Yeah.
So, you know, I put in for, I think, F, K, and B, because those are the troops that kind of border Troop G, and just hoped that I would get close to home.
Gotcha.
And again, I cannot exclude or shortchange the fact that I came on with a little more advantage than other people came on with, for sure. So, I got F. I ended up getting assigned to Catskill, which is in Greene County, which was about a 45-minute ride, which was a blessing considering where some people got sent. And, you know, I have to thank, you know, like all my godfathers and godmothers and aunties and uncles who were on the job and were in positions and places to kind of look out for me and take care of me and make sure I was okay. Because, again, if they would have sent me 4 hours away with 2 kids, I don't know if I'd have been able to do that.
Gotcha.
So, it worked out.
So how was it down there?
It was an eye-opening experience. Well, first of all, I FTO'd in Wilton, which is in Saratoga County, which is also 45 minutes away from here. And then I ended up also going to Greene County. And what people don't understand about the state police, especially like, you know, people that are from cities, which is, you know, like all the people from Albany that I know, people from, you know, is that people think of state police and they think, oh, they're on the highway, they work the throughway. But what they don't realize is once you get outside of your major metropolitan cities, once you get outside of your Albany, your Buffalo, your Syracuse, your New York City, there's a bunch of land and towns and people in between. Yeah, like those rural areas. And they don't have, you know, the funding for a city. Yeah, police. They don't have their own 24-hour police force. So state police is the police out there. So when I'm in Greene County, I'm not working a highway. Like, I never even touched a highway. Like, I'm literally doing, like, police work. When there's a domestic in a house, I'm going to that domestic. If there's a robbery at a bank, I'm going to that robbery. If someone's house gets burglarized, I'm going to that burglary. So we're actually doing all the things that your city PDs do, but just in the country, if that makes sense. Yep. But it was eye-opening because I was in the country. And, you know, people are always people. But things can be the same and yet still be so different. You know what I mean? So I got like my first taste of trailer parks on this job. I ain't never been on a trailer park. You ever been to a trailer park? Yes, once. Trailer park. But it was more recent. It's not like, I always like equate in my mind that a trailer park is like the rural projects. You know what I mean? Like, the trailer park is like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it is to me, even though I don't think that trailer parks are like federally funded like housing projects are, but that's kind of, that's where your low income people all end up migrating. Like, they kind of, you know, get them a little trailer, they set it up in a park, they pay rent to the park, you know what I mean? Yep. So it's kind of like, and it's like a compound, it's a community, like you go in there and it's like all the trailers are on top of each other. So in my mind, I equate it to like your housing project. But like, there be some dope trailers in there. There do. And I've been in some dope trailers. Some dope trailers. I've been to some dope trailers. Yeah. Don't get you a double wide. Don't get you a double. Nah, some dope trailers. There are. But at the same time, like, I can take you in the buildings on Rockaway Boulevard and take you in some of them apartments. Some people got their apartments laced. Some people. But let's be clear. The majority of them shits is not. It's a I've been on this job and been to houses where they have dirt floors. Like, people live in cabins, people live in tents, people live like, so I definitely, you know, it was definitely a different experience. But I have fun. I definitely enjoyed my time working in Greene County. All right. So at some point you get moved to the governor's detail. How does that come about? That came about because, like I said, when I came on the job, it was already established that you weren't getting G, which is where I lived. So I wanted to get closer to home. It was nothing more than that. So, on the job, and the governor's detail is a detail. There's a lot of special details on our job. There's, you know, scuba. There's the governor's detail. There's, you know, SORT, which is like our SWAT. Like, there's different details that you can put in for, and it's basically a special selection process. It's not the general rules for transfers, so you can move around on a detail quicker with less time on the job. You just have to be selected. whereas regular transfers go based on your seniority. So you're not moving until it's your time.
Gotcha.
So I put in for the governor's detail because, as you know, the governor's mansion's in Albany.
Yep.
At the time, I was living in Troy. It was like, you know, a no-win. And again, I had a couple aunties and uncles on the job who kind of looked out. So I was able to get the governor's detail with 2 years on, which is pretty much unheard of. That's not really a thing. Governor's detail is usually reserved for people with more time and seniority on. But so 2 years on the job, I go to the governor's detail, and at the time it was when Governor Patterson was the governor.
Okay.
And I was assigned as a trooper to the house. So, literally my job was like security of the mansion.
Gotcha.
Because they, you know, they have like tour groups that come through. We have to like supervise them. You know, they always have a trooper on that gate who controls access. You got to know who's allowed in, who's not. They got to be on a list. You have to have, you know, they have to be vetted,
Gotcha.
essentially, to come onto the property. You know, there's like a command center in there where they have like monitors.
That's dope.
For the whole grounds. Because people don't realize, but the governor's detail is probably at least, I'd say it's at least 4 or 5 acres of that compound. Yeah. Like, it's a huge property right in the center of Albany, and you don't really realize it. Like, you know, there's a pool house, there's an indoor pool, there's an outdoor pool, there's a basketball court, there's a tennis court, there's a rose garden, there's, you know, the mansion itself is 3 full stories plus a full attic and a full basement. Like, it's a huge property. So like you have to manage that. So, you know, it was a good experience. I do, even in retrospect, myself looking back, I was a little young for that. But you know, I wanted to get home. I needed to get home, and it was what worked for my home life, so I did it.
Gotcha. And
it was only for 2 years, and then I went back to the road.
Did you want to leave that detail?
I did not want to leave the detail. I got bounced off the detail.
You got bounced off the detail.
It was slightly controversial.
Oh.
Because I got moved at the time when the governor's detail transitioned from Governor Patterson to Governor Cuomo.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, Patterson, and here's the thing. So Patterson got in on a whim. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
But Patterson was a lieutenant governor for Eliot Spitzer.
Okay.
Who was client number 9.
Yes.
So Eliot Spitzer, and I don't remember if he was officially impeached or if he stepped down. But nonetheless, after that scandal broke, Eliot Spitzer is no longer governor. Patterson, the lieutenant governor, subsequently steps up, and now he's governor. He's governor, which is what's happening now with the Cuomo Hochul situation.
Yes.
So, when Patterson became governor, he kind of put his own people in.
I wanted to ask you that. I wanted to ask you, do you feel like part of the reason that even so young you got that opportunity was because you were a black trooper and there was a black governor?
I'm getting it all comes together. So Patterson got to pick his own detail, and Patterson's detail was a lot of color in that detail. Pretty colorful, and I mean, still when you looked at the numbers, we were still the minority, but to have that many color faces on one detail, it was unheard of. So much so that it made the news. Like, it was in the paper.
Okay.
Like, oh, you know, Governor Patterson only wants black people on his detail. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was just kind of mind-boggling, eye-opening. Just kind of gives you a taste of just the world, I guess. I don't know if it's a policing thing, because, you know, nobody said anything with this detail for years.
Was entirely
predominantly white. It was like not even a thought. But now you get 30%, you know, black and Latina, and it's like, oh, we gotta talk about it. And, so you know what I mean. So it was like a thing, and funny enough, and I'm not gonna say that I know what the reasonings were. When Patterson went, all that color went too.
Not all of it.
Yeah, pretty much. It was. I mean, you know, there's There's still a sprinkle here and there, but it was not at the level that Patterson's detail was. So that made the news too. Like, so when we all got booted, and I mean, it was pretty much like a thanks but no thanks. Like, and that's the thing about being on a detail. They can do that. At any time, they can say, you know what, Trooper Murray, your services are no longer needed here.
Go back to your station.
And it's kind of like they don't have to explain it. They don't have to have a reason. Gotcha. They don't have to have a question because it's a detail. It's not a transfer. It's a detail, and the detail is based upon the needs of the division of the New York State Police. So they don't have to explain anything to you. So I could never, really ask questions. However, I will say that there was one investigator who also, one of my aunties, good family friend, she got booted from the detail, and she was on the travel team. So she got booted from the detail, and she actually put in a lawsuit. And she got paid. Enough to where I wish I would have put in a lawsuit. But it was, and ultimately, and this is all Googleable. Like, I'm not like putting out any divine secrets. If you take the time to do the research, you can find these articles. And I never spoke to her about it. I read it in like the New York Times or something. Okay. Ultimately, what I read in the article was that she files this grievance, this lawsuit, and they ruled in her favor. But they never ruled in her favor and said anything that would imply that there was any sort of racial discrimination or racial anything behind the transfers that were made. Basically, she was paid because she was involuntarily abruptly transferred, and they compensated her for the monies she lost. Like, they're saying, okay, well, this transfer, when she was on the detail and she was getting X amount of overtime, she was making this. Now you move her here, she's making this. So they compensated her for the lost overtime without really, and I want to say it might have been a settlement. Like, they never really went the distance to
basically a spoonful to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so that no one ever really had to speak on it. You know what I mean? Like, they gave her her money, like, here go your coins, keep it moving. And
had they said that in the ruling, y'all still could have went back and used that case law as...
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny, because at the time when we got booted, we did. Like, all of us kind of got together, and we did file a grievance. And it was... And because after I got transferred from the government, I went back to Greene County. They sent me back to Catskill, which I was thankful for, because some people didn't. Some people got sent farther than they were. So I go back to Greene County, and one of the troopers who I was really good friends with down there, he came to me like, yo, Murray, I heard you suing the state. You suing the state? I'm like, I am not suing the state. He's like, that's what everybody's saying, because it's very much a gossip rumor mill around there too. That whole job, like, there's not too many secrets on this job. Gotcha. So I'm like, I'm not suing the state, but I did, and it wasn't really a grievance. It was more like a question, like, why? Why did I get transferred? So we go through this whole process collectively. There was a bunch of us that did it. We all kind of signed off on it, and the investigator from, I think he was from like EEO, comes to me, and he came to my station to speak to me, and he kind of was like, listen, Bob, this is what it is. They're basically just saying, it is what it is. And from here, you don't have to accept this, it is what it is. Your options are, you can sign off on it and say, I agree with the findings of the investigation. You can sign and say, I've gotten the results of this investigation, and, I'm not satisfied, I don't agree. Or you can literally go off, contact an attorney, and really push forward with this. And you would contact, like, the New York State Division of Human Rights, and really, if you want to pursue a lawsuit, you pursue a lawsuit. Now, at the time, I got 2 years on the job. So I kind of did the sign off, but I'm not happy. But I didn't feel comfortable to, like, go out and really file a suit. And it was really kind of, you know what really stopped me? Because I'm really not that person. Like, I'm really not that person who gets intimidated about standing up and saying and doing the right thing. What it was for me was I didn't realize that, like, we weren't really communicating. All the people who were honest, we weren't really talking the way we should have been. Mm-hmm. So if I would have known that Charlotte was going forward, I probably would I probably would have, you know, jumped on that. But because I didn't know, I kind of was like, I don't want to be the only one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and at this point, we're separated because we're all over the state.
Yeah,
They
y'all
moved
all
us
went
all
back
different places.
yeah.
So I kind of just signed off and was like, you know what? I'm going to just do my job. I still got a long career ahead of me. I don't know if I want to make them kind of waves, like out on a limb on my own. So that's kind of how that went.
Understood. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. Then the riots start. And that throws everything into a whirlwind.
Yeah.
How was it being like, law enforcement really, once again, it became the ops. Like, it was a real divide in the community. So how was it just being a trooper in general? And then we could talk about, like, how it was just being torn as being a black human being in this community and still being law enforcement.
All right, so I'm going back. I'm going back to the George Floyd. Okay. You threw a lot of pieces at me.
All right, so the riots start. What was y'all going through?
Okay, so the riots start. And obviously there were riots everywhere. It wasn't just, you know, out in the Midwest. It was everywhere. So we had our own riots here in Albany.
That McDonald's still ain't functioning.
They shut that.
They tore that thing up.
I think it was closed before the riots happened. No.
I don't think so. Was it?
I don't know. But it thankfully, luckily, and I mean not so much, but I wasn't working. Like, remember, I was at home watching it with you. I was not working when it really went live and it really blew up. But it did. People were angry, and you know, a lot of stuff got tore up. A lot of, you know what I mean? There was a lot that went on. So people that, like, you know, troopers from my station ended up having to go out and respond and assist APD. Because, like, right now, you know, I'm stationed at the Capitol. That's pretty much what we do. We do security for the state property within the city of Albany. So that Empire State Plaza and then the campus uptown, like, we do that. But as far as, like, policing in the city of Albany, we'll augment and supplement and assist APD, but we really kind of let them handle it because it is their, it's really their city.
Gotcha.
So, but you know, everybody was out that day. Everybody was out. And I heard about it. I wasn't there, and I mean, I heard about it from, you know, I saw a lot of it on video, and I also, you know, heard about it from my coworkers when I get to work the next day. And you know what? It's funny. They didn't call us. I'm surprised I didn't get a call to come in. They didn't call us. I mean, I could have very well been out there on the line too. But at some point, troopers that I work with, they're out there and they're on this line, and they got, like, you know, their bats and their helmets and their riot shields, and you know, people are throwing bricks at them. They're throwing, like, the Molotov cocktails. Somebody got hit in the ankle, you know, with a brick or a cinder block or whatever it was. Like, you know, they took a lot of punishment that day. They took a lot of punishment. Like, and I understood that people were like, and it was unfortunate. I mean, and that's the thing, like, you know, police take a lot of flack, but we end up standing and being put in positions that nobody else is doing that. Like, who else is just standing in line and letting somebody throw a brick at them because, you know, it's your job to protect this building. You know what I mean? So, you know, you're out there, and I mean, and I understand what it was for, and I do understand as a member of the black community, like, I know how people feel. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't keep stepping on somebody's, and this is what I, you know, when I'm trying to explain to my, you know, my coworkers who aren't from the community and who don't understand, I'm like, you know, it's a daily struggle. Like, there's a lot of things that you guys will never experience or feel or understand. I don't know that I could ever translate it to a way that would that would be relatable for you.
Gotcha.
But, you know, you can't keep stepping on somebody's neck and then tell them how to react.
Literally.
So I understood. Like, when these people were rioting and doing all this, I'm not saying it's right, because it wasn't. But I absolutely understood why. You know what I mean? I understood. By the same token, flip that, you know, I don't know if I can again try to express and relay upon these officers that sentiment when they're the ones out there getting bricks thrown at their head. You know what I mean? And you know, and people were angry, and they were rightfully so, but all these guys that are standing out there like, well, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I didn't do it, you know? So it was a tough time. It was a tough time. It was a tough time for me to be a black female, and it was a tough time for me to be a police officer. And I did it really, things like that, it's bothersome. It for a long time, like, because those riots last a long time. We were doing
not even just the riots,
like
but then the protests, the marches.
Once that happened, we were activated. Like, every New York State police officer, at least in G for sure. I don't know how it was going in F and K and the other troops, but in our troop, every single one of us had to work every single day for what? 3, 4, 5 weeks. Like, we were literally working every day. And I mean, we're working 12, 13, 14. Like, there was no, like, all the labor laws went out the window. Like, there was no labor laws. It's just, all right, go home, get you 2 hours of sleep, but we need you back. And we're mobilizing large groups to all over the state. So it's like, you know, they got planned protests in Buffalo. We need y'all out there. So it was like, it was a lot. It was a lot. And it was hard. Like, it just you know, I don't even know if I can verbalize. There's so many things that I have in my head all the time. I'm going to write a book. Like, that's my plan. I gotta.
Y'all heard it here first, man.
I gotta start, like, jotting things down, and, like, because there's so much that I feel like I gotta let out. But yeah. So.
All right. So as a New York State trooper, y'all have a union.
We have a union.
But y'all also created the Guardians.
We created the Guardians.
Tell me about the Guardians.
Okay, well, we didn't create the Guardians.
I'm not saying, okay.
We didn't create the Guardians.
Tell me about
the Guardians. has always been a thing.
Okay.
When I came on the job 15 and a half years ago, there was a Guardians.
Gotcha.
It did kind of, I want to say, die down. Like, it kind of lost traction or whatever. So we're trying to bring it back.
Gotcha. And
the Guardians is it's a group of minority members for New York State Police, and we are really just trying to collectively get together. And I mean, in its simplest terms, just try to leave the job better than what we left it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, leave the job better than what we left it. As we stand now, in terms of, like, minority recruitment and hiring, our numbers are beyond depressing. It's almost like we haven't made any progress in terms of, like, because in the 80s, in the early 80s, which is when my father came on the job, there was actual federal legislation. Okay. Like, the federal government actually came to the New York State Police, pulled their rosters, and was like, yeah, nah. By, 1988 or 1990, we expect your numbers to be this. We expect your minority membership to be this.
Gotcha.
And with that, there was an influx of minority hiring. Like, unprecedented.
Gotcha.
But once the federal government started looking, it's like we slowly kind of somehow slid back down that slope, and now it's terrible. Troop G is the largest troop in the state.
Gotcha. This
is the largest troop with the largest membership. I am the only black female assigned to Troop G. That's crazy.
Yeah.
The only one. When you have it within Troop G, Albany, Troy, Schenectady, like there's enough of a minority population to where I shouldn't be the only one. You know what I mean?
Y'all the ops.
And I get it, but you know what? Representation matters. Like, it matters. And, you know...
Nah, it really does. And I'm just talking junk because even with me, like, on a much smaller scale as a basketball player, refs have been the ops. We complain, we say they can't relate to us, they don't know what we going through as players, and especially how we play the game. So I became a ref. You know what I mean? Like, we can't keep sitting back complaining that it's not right over there, not right over there, and not doing anything to change that narrative.
Yeah,
so
like, it's like, in everything. In everything. Like, you know, you will always hear the argument that, you know, America was founded on a platform of racism. You will hear that, you know, systematic racism infiltrates so many different aspects of government and, you know, this country. And I do believe that to be true. Like, you know what I mean? I believe that there are just things that have been status quo for so long that people stop realizing that, you know, maybe it's not right.
Gotcha.
But if you don't have anyone in power who shares the same sentiment and the same, you know what I mean, interest as you, nothing is ever going to change.
Gotcha.
It's not, you know what I mean? And people say, you know, voting doesn't matter. I understand why people would say that. But that doesn't mean you give up, because on every level, that representation matters. Like, you know what I mean? You really need people, and it's not, and some of it's a race thing, and some of it's a cultural thing, and some of it is just a relatability thing. Yep. You need people that can relate, that understand. You know what I mean? Yep. Like,
and sometimes it's just like you said, it's coming from your region, or coming
even
from,
like when I was working in Greene County, I'd be walking into these places, and I'm like, I don't understand. But, you know, I had 5 other troopers like, nah, Bob, this is what it goes. This is how they do it. This is what goes on. This is what it is. I'm like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? But on the flip side, you're never going to have that in your inner city minority communities if you don't have someone to be like, listen, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it matters, and it's important. So, it's something that, you know, we feel like is important. So we formulated the Guardians just to kind of have a collective with, you know, obviously we have our representatives. I'm actually on the executive board for the Guardians, to have a seat at the table. Like, we got to get a seat at the table. Even with, like, member hiring, like, we need to be able to have a say when you're vetting backgrounds. Because, like, with state police, even when we have minorities apply, a lot of them lose out in the background. So we are really trying to sit down with, like, the heads of state police and really have a conversation. Like, okay, let us see your numbers. Let us see what we're doing. Like, where are we? Like, we're like, if we get you, you know, 10,000 minorities to apply, and somehow, some way, it dwindles down, and we're still not getting a percentage on the end. We need to know where we're losing people. We need to know, you know, where they're dying off, and where, like, where it's.
So at least we should have a better idea of what we should be looking for, or make an adjustment on what y'all looking for.
Or what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know what? It's funny because years ago I applied for this recruitment position that I didn't get. Whatever, not salty. But
as she takes a drink.
Like, I always felt like if police agencies are serious about actually, if they really care, if they're really serious about it, like, they need to start really, like, taking an in-depth look. Like, for me, I proposed when I went to this interview that I didn't get the job for, that we really start looking at, like, maybe some sort of mentorship, like some sort of, like, apprenticeship, if you will, because it is a culture. Like, policing is a culture. Like, and if you don't know, then you don't know. Like, so we have so many of our youth, you know, getting X'd out of the background because, you know, they got bad credit, or, you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be. Like, you need to know, like, you need to have, and again, like, a lot of times these kids, These inner cities come from broken homes. They don't have proper role models. Like, we need people to be like, listen, this is what you need to do if this is where you want to be. You know what I mean? It's not, it's like with anything. Like, you know what I mean? This is where you need to start. This is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to know. This is what I need you, like, if you want to get to here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
you don't wait till kids get to
like,
college
so don't
or the
wait
NBA to start training in basketball.
To college and say, oh, well, you were smoking weed for 12 years, so we can't take you. Like, don't wait till they get to, you know, college to be like, oh, well, you got a tattoo on your wrist, so, you know, you're not going to, you know what I mean? Like,
be around and say you probably shouldn't get that there because it's going to hinder you.
Yeah, I feel like, you know.
Gotcha.
So.
No, that makes a lot of sense. All right. So, closing in on retirement, possibly. Possibly. How you feeling about that? Like, Excited? You got plans after? You know what you want to do? You know what you're looking to?
I don't. I don't. You know what? Like,
you still got some time.
I got some time. I got about 4.5 years left. So I do have a little bit of time, not a lot of time. I don't. I mean, so what? 4.5, 5 years. I'll be 45. So I have no intentions of, oh, I'm retired now. I'm just never gonna do nothing. Yeah. So, you know, I'll do something. I would like to do something. First of all, it's gonna be on my own time. Like, I don't really have any. I don't want to be
clocking in
as obligated.
Gotcha.
Maybe real estate. That's something I've kind of bounced around. Maybe real estate. I wouldn't mind getting a part-time job for an airline, getting some free flights. That bounces around in my head. I also, I know you're not a fan.
Uh-oh.
But I also have been thinking a lot about politics. Like, I've been thinking a lot about politics. And I say that because, again, like I said, it just goes back to needing a seat at the table. Like, needing to have someone who actually cares about trying to affect real change. And, like, I don't know, I just, because I worked on the Capitol, like, I get to kind of get a little glimpse of how, you know, government works and kind of the policies and the procedures. And I don't know, I do have so many thoughts and ideas and so many areas that I'm passionate about that I feel like, you know, I could make a difference. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so, like, I don't know. I guess. We'll see.
Like, would you would start, like, run for a ward?
Yeah, here? Absolutely. You know, like local city, you know, city council. You know, start there and kind of see where it takes me.
I'm not against that. I just don't know if I'm the image that your political campaign would need.
You know what? And you said that, and I listen. That in itself is a problem with politics. It shouldn't be about an image. It should be about what's real. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I'm fully okay with running a good campaign and giving people all of this and all of that. And if the image or if it isn't what people want, I'm okay with that. It'll be their loss. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? But I'm not too caught up in, oh, it's got to be this kind of image. I'd rather it just be what it is, and either you want it or you don't. You know what I mean? Because too much, and that's the problem. There's too much image. There's too much, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking with me. Thank you for being at the Bar Wit Beast. Cool interview. Now you can go back to being my wife. Yo, thank y'all for tuning in. Shout out to one of the official clothing sponsors at the Bar Wit Beast, Hood House of Hoops. Come check us out at 341st Street.